UFC Fight Night Azerbaijan takes place this weekend, and we will be going through the entire card from top to bottom. In the main event, we got Rafael Fiziev taking on Mexico's Manuel Torres. Manuel is, of course, coming off that big knockout win over Grant Dawson. In his last fight, he was scheduled to fight Benny Dariush, but he had to pull out of that fight due to an injury. All of Manuel Torres' wins in the UFC have come by a first round finish. Most of them were knockouts, and he has that one submission win over Chris Duncan. His only loss has been to Ignacio Bahamondes, who Rafael Fiziev incidentally beat 2 fights ago. In his last fight, he lost to Mauricio Hufi by second round knockout. Devastating knockout loss for Rafael Fiziev. His only time that he has been knocked out in the UFC. He has taken some big shots in his fights. Prior to that, he got knocked out bad by Justin Gaethje as well. But Rafael Fiziev has good wins over a former champion like Rafael dos Anjos, former title challenger Renato Moicano. But at the end of the day, I got Manuel Torres beating Rafael Fiziev in this fight by second round knockout. I think this fight is going to look very similar to Manuel Torres' Drew Dober fight, where he's kind of gauging his distance, and then launching one big shot, catching Rafael Fiziev right at the end of his punch and knocking him down and eventually getting a TKO win. What stands out about Manuel Torres in this fight is his size compared to Rafael Fiziev. Rafael Fiziev is quite a small lightweight. If you saw him in that fight against Justin Gaethje, he was actually looking much smaller than Gaethje, probably because he's kind of short. He's just like a ball of muscle in there. And though it's listed as only 2 inches taller than Manuel Torres actually looks much taller and bigger than him. Rafael Fiziev is that little ball of he's a ball of muscle in there, but his shoulders are kind of small, traps are kind of small, legs are not really that built. On the other hand, Manuel Torres is a good sized, huge. He's actually a huge lightweight, and I think Manuel Torres is gonna catch Rafael Fiziev during one of those exchanges and knock him out. Manuel Torres has good experience against this body type of opponent, Nicholas Mota and others. Drew Dober, like I mentioned earlier, even Grant Dawson is a little bigger than Rafael Fiziev, but Manuel Torres has done these fighters dirty, and he's a good grappler as well. Like Rafael Fiziev worked his grappling game against Ignacio Bahamondes towards the end of the second and third round and banged those rounds. I don't think he's going to be able to emulate that against Manuel Torres, and Manuel Torres is eventually going to get that finish over Rafael Fiziev. In the co-main event, we got Shara Magamedov taking on Michel Pereira, and I got Shara Magamedov winning this fight via boring decision. Michel Pereira has looked like absolute trash in his last few fights, getting knocked out by Kyle Dawkins, losing a boring decision to Abbas Magomedov, who we will talk about soon, getting dog tired against Fluffy Hernandez, Fluffy Hernandez is a great opponent, but man, Michel Pereira literally had one exchange of cardio in him before he gassed out. Even in his last fight against Zachary Reese, that was so weird. He didn't really get low kicked, but he called for a nut shot. I mean, if you look at the fight, it was so weird. On the other hand, I think Shara Magomedov at this point in his career is much more locked in. He's been 3 rounds in a bunch of his fights against Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, MVP, though he lost that fight against Bruno Silva in his debut. Got that great knockout over Andrei Petrosky. Oh no, that was Armen Petrosian, not Andrei Petrosky. I'm sorry, got confused. It's about Armenian sounding names. And he is just more locked in at this point in his career. Better cardio, better looking striking as well. Shara Magomedov is a smooth striker. The problem with Shara is he has no power in his hands, while Michel Pereira does have power, but Shara has shown that he has what it takes to evade those big shots, stay elusive in there. Michel Pereira is not really a grappler. You don't see him going in for takedowns as such. So I got Shara Magomedov winning. Shara has shown a weakness to wrestling, but I got Shara Magomedov winning this fight by a 30-27 decision. I think he's going to school Michel Pereira on the feet and get ranked in the middleweight division, possibly at number 15, and look at some big fights in the future. Nazim Sadikov versus Mateusz Camilo. I got Nazim Sadikov actually winning this fight. I mean, Nazim Sadikov went to a draw with Slava Claus. Mateusz Camilo beat Slava Claus with ease. but I think Nazem Sadikov has what it takes to stop the grappling of Mateusz Camillo, which he showed against Slava Claus. And if you just strike with Slava, he is a very, very good striker. That's his specialty, his boxing and his Muay Thai. And I think Nazem Sadikov is a much bigger guy than Mateusz Camillo. I think that's what's going to come down to the size of Nazim Sadikov and his experience. Nazem Sadikov is a much more experienced fighter than Mateusz Camillo. I think Mateusz Camillo is just coming off that, just as three wins in the UFC so far. And you should go through Mateusz Camillo's story of how he got into the UFC, by the way. It's pretty crazy. So, yeah, I got Nazem Sadikov winning this fight, outstriking Mateusz Camillo on the feet. He's a good striker. And even in those grappling clinch exchanges, I see Nazem Sadikov kind of outsizing and out muscling Mateusz Camillo. I think Mateusz Camillo would be better suited as a featherweight. So, and Nazem Sadikov is a big lightweight. So, I got Nazem Sadikov winning this fight. In the next fight, we got Asu Almabayev taking on Charles Johnson, and I got Asu Almabayev winning this fight by showcasing his grappling. Charles Johnson is a dangerous guy on the feet, but he doesn't really knock guys out with one shot. And I see Asu Almabayev adopting a similar game plan to Charles Johnson's previous opponent, Bruno Silva, who I thought actually beat Charles Johnson. It was this very close split decision. But I think Bruno Silva got the better of Charles Johnson in the clinch exchanges, and I see Asu Almabayev working the clinch work, working the takedown game. Asu Almabayev showed great takedowns in his fights against Jose Ochoa, good grappling against Alex Perez as well, who has a win over Charles Johnson. Charles Johnson has shown weakness in some fights in his wrestling game against Rafael Estevam, against Cody Durden, and I see Asu Almabayev adopting a similar game plan, outmuscling Charles Johnson. This guy is very fast with his takedowns. I mean, you need to be someone really good to beat Asu Almabayev like Manel Cap, and I think he's gonna be able to beat Charles Johnson easily. Ikram Aliskerov versus Bruno Ferreira. I got Ikram Aliskerov winning this fight. Bruno Ferreira has not looked that great in his last couple of fights, to be honest. He got knocked out, of course, by Gregory Rodriguez in the first round not that long ago. Before that, that Marvin Vittori fight was really, really close in a very disconcerting way. It was not a very good performance by Bruno Ferreira in my books. Bruno Ferreira also has some losses in his career to guys like Abus Magomedov and Nursultan Rozaboyev, both of whom are on this card. So and on the other hand, Ikram Aliskerov has looked promising with wins over Andre Muniz. That was a good win. In his last fight, he beat Park Jung Yong, who is a good, capable opponent. So I got Ikram Aliskerov beating Bruno Ferreira in this fight, outstriking him on the feet. We are seeing Aliskerov after a long time. On the other hand, Bruno Ferreira is coming back quickly after a knockout loss. We'll see how he looks, but in my opinion, Ikram Aliskerov is just the better fighter in the grappling, in the striking. He's gonna beat Bruno Ferreira in this fight, in my opinion. Probably get a finish. We'll see what happens. Abus Magomedov versus Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. Now I know Mikhail Oleksiejczuk is probably on a better recent run than Abus Magomedov, but I got Abus Magomedov winning this fight by decision. To me, this fight comes down to Michel Pereira schooled Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. Abus Magomedov beat Michel Pereira. Caio Borralho schooled Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. Abus Magomedov and Caio Borralho had a razor close fight which could have gone to Abus Magomedov if that fight wasn't in Brazil. You know how the Brazilian factor is. The crowds there are very loud. So whenever a Brazilian fighter does something, crowds go really crazy. And in my opinion, that really affects the judging of these fights. So I think Abus Magomedov is just more skilled than Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. Mikhail Oleksiejczuk, in his last fight, went to a tooth and nail decision with Mark Andre Barrio, and I think Abus Magomedov would absolutely school Mark Andre Barrio. Abus Magomedov is actually a very skilled fighter. If you just look at his striking, very clean striking, very lethal striking at times. He has good wins over Michel Pereira, Bruno Fajea, and others. Even in that Joe Pfeiffer fight, he was doing really well, and he just got caught in a submission. He was doing really well against Caio Borralho, as I mentioned earlier. So Apos Magomedov is no joke. And Mikhail Oleksiejczuk has some very, very iffy losses in his career. You know, a loss to Kevin Holland in the first round, loss to Shara Magamedov, and a bunch of other weird losses which you shouldn't be losing to if you want to be elite in the middleweight division. I don't think Mikhail Oleksiejczuk is elite in the middleweight division by any standard. So I got Abus Magomedov beating Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. In the next fight, we got Farman Hasnov versus Eric Nolan. And I got Eric Nolan winning this fight. If you watch Eric Nolan's fight against Baisengor Susukayev, that was a really close fight until Eric Nolan got caught in a submission. Eric Nolan actually rocked Baisangur Susurkayev pretty good at the end of that first round, and who knows how that fight would have gone if that fight had lasted any longer. Farman Hassanov, on the other hand, this is UFC debut. He's a guy from Azerbaijan, and he has doesn't look that good on the feet. He's mostly a grappler, and Eric Nolan showed in that fight against Baisangur Susukayev that he can nullify the grappling, though he got submitted. I think he just made a really wrong move in the fight. He went for a heel hook when he should have actually kind of tried to scramble out. But these things happen. I think Eric Nolan is going to learn. He's a very young fighter still. He's 26, I believe, and Farman Hassanov is 30. So I got Eric Nolan winning this fight. Farman Hassanov is primarily a grappler, and I think Eric Nolan has what it takes to keep it on the feet and defeat Farman Hassanov. Abdul Rahman Yakiev versus Julius Walker. So this fight basically comes down to who's less garbage, and I think Abdul Rahman Yakiev is less garbage than Julius Walker. They both have wins over Rafael Carquera, who has losses to everyone in the UFC at this point. Abdul Rahman Yakiev has also beaten Brenson Ribeiro, who's garbage himself. And Julius Walker, I believe, has lost to Alonzo Benefield. So I think Abdul Rahman Yakiev is probably going to take Julius Walker down and submit him in this fight. You know, I think Julius Walker is just dog shit, and I think Abdul Rahman Yakiev is just a little above that, and that's basically what comes down to. Julius Walker also lost to Justin Jacoby by knockout in his last fight. I think Abdul Rahman Yakiev is a little better than that level of opponent. We'll see, though. You never know in this game. These light heavyweights are really, really awful, so you never fucking know. But we'll see what happens. But I got Abdul Rahman Yakiev winning this fight. Nursultan Razaboyev versus Andrei Pulayev. I got Nursultan Ruziboyev winning this fight. Nursultan Ruziboyev has some decent wins. He beat Bruno Fajea at one point, beat some other guys as well at middleweight. Andrei Pulayev looks kind of weak. He's looked kind of weak in his UFC run. So we'll see what happens. Nursultan Ruziboyev is a huge, huge dude. Andrei Pulayev, I think, is a little small for middleweight, and I think that's what it comes down to. The size of Nursultan is going to be too much for Pulayev to overcome. In the next fight, we got Can Offley against Javier Reyes, and I got Can Offley winning this fight. Javier Reyes is a decent fighter, but I think Can Offley is a little better than that level of opponent. Of course, Javier Reyes is out of Colombia. Can Offley has some good wins in the UFC. A good fighter out of Australia, and I think Can Offley is gonna beat Javier Reyes. Can Offley has shades of Volkanovski in him, but he's not that slick in my view. And his slickness and striking, in my opinion, is what's gonna come down to. Daniil Donchenko versus Andreas Gustafsson. I got Daniil Donchenko winning this fight by knockout. Andreas Gustafsson, of course, got knocked out at his last fight. I think he beat Chaos Williams in his debut. And Daniil Donchenko has some good wins in the UFC already. He beat Alex Morono in his last fight, looked good. And Andreas Gustafsson is a wild guy, and I think Daniil Donchenko has what it takes to catch him coming in and get that knockout win over Andreas Gustafsson. And In the opening bout of this card, we got Beksat Almakan taking on Gene Matsumoto. I got Gene Matsumoto winning this fight, while Beksat Almakan has fought a good level of competition in the UFC. He's fought, of course, Alejandro Topuria. He fought Umar Nurmagomedov in his debut. He fought that Brad Katona, I believe his name is Brad Katona. Yeah, Gene Matsumoto fought Brad Katona as well. Vexar Albakan, of course, knocked out Brad Katona as Brad Katona was going in for a knockout, going for a takedown. Vexat caught him with a uppercut and knocked him out. But Gene Matsumoto, I think, is a really, really good fighter in my opinion. He clearly won that last fight against Farid Basharat. I was furious when they gave that fight to Farid Basharat. I think Gene Matsumoto all won that fight against Rob Font as well. The split decision loss for Gene Matsumoto. I think that third round for Font was really good. Gene Matsumoto, I believe, had taken that fight on short notice, which I think was the reason why he got tired. But I got Gene Matsumoto winning this fight. But while Beksat has gone in there and survived against good competition. We haven't really seen what he does on the offensive, and I think Gene Matsumoto is a very offensive fighter. He's always pushing forward, throwing leg kicks, throwing good punches. He's a very good striker, shown some great grappling as well. And Bexar Almakhan hasn't really showed too much offensively, but Gene Matsumoto, I think, is gonna push forward, put it on Bexar Almakhan, and I think he's gonna finish. I can smell a finish for Gene Matsumoto. I think so. Let me know what y'all think. Who do you think is gonna win these fights? What do you think about these predictions and this analysis? Let me know. I'll see y'all soon. Peace.